I got love for my brother, but we can never go nowhere unless we share with each other. We've got to start making changes. Learn to see me as a brother instead of two distant strangers. And that is a verse from Tupac Shakur's hit record, Changes. That is your trigger warning. This episode comes with a trigger warning because there's going to be a few hypersensitive people. I learnt that hypersensitive word from one white person that tried to use that word against me. That's now joined my vocabulary. But as I was saying, this comes with a trigger warning because I know that there are some people who are the black gatekeepers of certain things who are going to be triggered by this episode. I deliver this episode in true Toya Talks fashion, honest, straight to the point, and direct. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? How's it been? How's it been going? How have you been self-caring and maintaining a stable level of mental health? It has been a roller coaster of many different emotions. We have seen the resurgence of Black Lives Matter. We have seen the protests. We have seen shift. This is the season of shift. And what do I mean by that? We have now been able to push Black Lives Matter in the forefront of white people, those in influence, those in position of change, those managers, senior managers, CEOs who have held on to their white privilege given to them by their brothers and sisters of colonization. And they have used this white privilege to further push the oppression of Black people. And we are shaking the foundations of the seats in which they sit. This movement of change, this shift can only take effect if, as Black people, we do some housekeeping. And that's why I did the trigger warning, because we need to do some work. And we need to do this work in order for the shift, the change, the benefits of that possible shift will be able to manifest itself. So last week, I'm going to speak quite candidly. I had been atted. I got a few ats on Instagram because there had been a few Black platforms who had asked about Black podcasters, like influential Black podcasters. And they had done a list, and then they said at the bottom of the list, if there's anybody who you can think of, please add them below. And obviously the Toya Talks tribe came out in full force, and I was being atted, and I clicked to see what it was, and I saw the list, and Toya Talks didn't feature in that list, but like I said, the Toya Talks tribe came out in full effect and made sure that they had mentioned me. There were several of you, and I just want to say thank you for that. And I felt very upset, and I had to then explore why I felt upset. Follow me here. Toya Talks has been a movement since, I'd say, end of 2016, early 2017. And it started off on social media. Those who know where it started. And here we are today, podcast deep, website deep, masterclass deep, and everything in between. And in my head, I was thinking, why isn't Toya Talks on those lists though? Why? Why isn't the Toya Talks podcast on those lists? And fair enough, Toya Talks podcast launched in January 2020 this year. And I was like, I know I'm affecting change because women all over the world, we're talking Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, different parts of America, Kenya, Gambia, Ghana, Belgium, Australia, all over the world have reached out to me, have told me what they have and how they have used the Toya Talks platform to achieve and affect change in their workplaces, and how much Toya Talks as a platform, as a brand, has fundamentally changed their careers. So I know that this movement is affecting lives, but in a domestic setting like the UK where I reside, why are my fellow gatekeepers not acknowledging the power, even just the platform of Toya Talks? And I became very dejected. And in exploring why, I was just like, maybe I should, reduce the podcast episodes bi-weekly, like take a break for a couple of weeks and then come back and do episodes bi-weekly. And last week I had this conversation with a friend, and I was like, I just don't understand, like, why, the platform isn't being recognized, and therefore that recognition will propel the platform even more and allow even more people, Black women, to be aware of this platform and be able to access it and benefit it. Because this platform, this podcast, is for Black women. Everything I do is for Black women. So I'm wondering why those gatekeepers aren't seeing this, or aren't acknowledging this, or just ignoring it. Why are the blogs not talking about it? Because, there's so many things I share here, but more importantly, these Black women are really taking away things from here that are effectively changing their careers. And my friend said, you know what, Toy, it's funny you say that, because there was another Black podcaster, and she had actually said that she was shocked that her name was even mentioned, because she gets no love from the Black community in terms of the Black gatekeepers, not necessarily from her audience. Her audience will always love and encourage her. And she felt like she was going to pack it all in. And for her, it was like, if my own people do not see me, how do I expect then to affect change from white people, and white people therefore see the platform that she's creating? And I completely understood it. And I felt away. I'm not gonna lie, I felt away, because I know what I put into this to be able to access Black women and to be able to share. Like, I know how deep I have to go within myself to be able to feel comfortable enough to share my experiences in the workplace and give you the gems and allow you to learn from my mistakes and advise you. And as soon as I was going through that, I had quite a few messages. It was like the universe could hear how I was feeling. And quite a few women had messaged me, because obviously last week's episode, White Proximity, had really resonated with them. And I said to myself, do you know what? I just need to focus on doing what I do. And that is Toya Talks. And everything that is supposed to happen will happen. And whether the Black gatekeepers see me or not, it's up to them. But I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. When we talk about Black gatekeepers, we're talking about some of the token Black people in certain positions, because some white constructs and white organizations are happy to have one. Yeah. And whilst one is not diversity, it's a start, but we need a comma and a few more. And what I'm finding with Black gatekeepers, and I know it's a form of mental slavery created by white people to control Black people, where we only see one of us at a time, and therefore, rather than us seeing it as an opportunity to open the door for others, we close the door, because we don't either want to share, we don't want our position to be infiltrated, and we're just so grateful to just be the token one. But a lot of these token ones are then going on social media saying Black Lives Matters, because we're Black people in the community, our life matters all the time, and talking about what can we do to create opportunities. But you're in a position to create an opportunity through your platform or through the gate that you are protecting, but you're not letting people like me or others in. And I'm not sitting here saying it's owed to us. Nothing is ever owed to you. Nothing has been owed. Everything I have, everything I have done, I have worked for, I have sacrificed blood, sweat and tears. But you can't say on one hand that, oh, what can we do? What can I do to and then you're in a position to do it, but you're just willfully choosing not to, because you're refusing to deal with that mental block that prevents you from allowing others to access a platform through you. You don't want to give people the chance because you do not want your station to be taken, and you're happy with just being the token. You're happy with being the white man's token. A few months ago, there was a lady on social media, and she'd come up on my Twitter feed, and she basically had said that she is now the head of podcast commissioning for a certain company, and she's looking for Black podcasters or ethnic minority people from the ethnic minority community to be able to work with them, put them on whatever the word that she used. And one thing with me is I'm a proud African woman, but for the love of Toya Talks and what it does, I've challenged myself to make sure that I come out of my comfort zone, because whilst coming out of my comfort zone to be able to interact and say, hey, I need help, or hey, I'm here, it requires me to be vulnerable. But I know the strength and the power of Toya Talk. So I trust in that vulnerability. I trust in it. So I sent her a direct message. I said, hey, my name is Toya Washington. I am the founder of Toya Talks. I have a podcast of the same name. And I would really be grateful if, we could probably work together. I've got a Toya Talks Live coming up, because at that point, Toya Talks Live was the date had been finalised. And I'd love to invite you to it. But more importantly, I'd love for you to have a listen to the podcast. Tell me what you think. And maybe there could be some synergy for collaboration. So about 48 hours later, she comes back to me. Black woman. I'm so proud of her to even be in a position where she is now commissioning. Because whenever we see Black women in those positions, we automatically know that we have had to work and claw our way there. So there's that respect level that I have for any Black woman in a position of power, or is that gatekeeper. So she responded back to me, and her response was so interesting. She says, hi Toya, I know your podcast because I have listened to your podcast quite avidly and regularly take notes. There are a few things I think you could improve in terms of production, like doing like an introduction. But if there are any opportunities, I will let you know in the future to be able to work together. I was confused there. I said, what? Wasn't you the one that 48 hours before was saying that you want to collaborate with and do some commissioning work with Black podcasters? That I don't understand. So you know about my podcast. Like, you're taking notes. So clearly you're gaining something. You don't take notes for something you're not gaining. Like, you're telling me you avidly gain. So what? You couldn't reach out to me? Like, what's up? Okay, cool. You don't owe it to me. I've reached out to you at the end of the day. You're telling me I could do an introduction. I'm not like other podcasters. And that's the reason why you're taking notes. That's the reason why you're listening to me. Because I'm not like the rest. I am in my own lane, walking in my own purpose, affecting change, how I do it in my authentic self. So whilst everybody may have a couple of jingles, that's not how I start. I start with a quote to give you a flavour of what this podcast is going to be. And in everybody walking like clones, no one stands out. I stand out because I'm authentic and I am just myself. So I asked her for the feedback. She gave it to me. Great, but that's to one side because I believe in what this is. I believe in this movement. And it's enough for you to keep coming back and listening and taking notes. So clearly, you're whatever. Okay, cool. You're entitled to your opinion. But she closed that gate. You asked for it. You know the quality of the podcast, but you're now telling me I'll get in contact with you in the future. But wasn't it you that says you want to work and be collaborative? That sounded like a here and now type situation. And it is that drawbridge mentality, the drawbridge mentality. Whereas Black people, we walk down that drawbridge, then we close it up behind us and nobody else can come. That is not progressive. There is no future in that, because what we are doing is maintaining the oppressive isolation of Black people when we do that. We are happy to be one because we don't want to see many, because we feel as though we are the token. There is no more room. But what you are doing is pushing the racist agenda of those white privileged people who are just happy to use you as the token and only you. And that means one at a time is not progressive. It is stagnation. And until you take responsibility of the power that comes with being a gatekeeper, by opening the gate, and I'm not saying open the floodgates, but strategically opening the gate and affecting change, you yourself will never see progress as the token, because there is only a ceiling level for tokens. And once you've hit that ceiling, you then remain stagnant. You don't even create the opportunity for growth because you are the only one. Dear Black people, let us do better. I take it as a task that must be accomplished when I go into an organization in my role as a contract consultant, a senior contract manager. I know the sacrifice. We know the sacrifice that was made for me to be there. And I am regularly the token. How am I progressive with that token? When I am in a position to hire teams, I make sure that drawbridge is open. Because if I can open the drawbridge and allow my fellow Black brothers and sisters to come in, I'm now creating an opportunity for my own growth too. And also as well, there is a power in seeing people that look like you. There is a gift that you sow into the world when you create opportunity for others. How many meetings and interviews and panels have I been on where I see, listen, if you're being shortlisted for a role, the potential is there. I just need to see potential. If I see the potential, see that you're hungry, I will let you in. Because you must have the credentials in order for me to have shortlisted you. I have been in teams where I've created all black team. All black team. And it doesn't just stop there or end there with just hiring them, training them, making sure they are better than me, on the road to being better than or better than me. Because as I move up, I expect one of them to replace me and do better. And as I move up, I expect them to see where they can move to and surpass me. Because the more of us that are in the position to affect change, the more that change will be affected. We are talking about the power of our blackness. To be a gatekeeper, to be the token, I'm not taking away from the fact that there must be something special about you, other than your black skin. But then you need to start seeing what is special about fellow black people who also have that potential to be great, because you started off as potential. You didn't start off as a finished article. You started off as potential. But unless you do the work of working through the mental trauma of our blackness in a civilization, quote unquote, that is here right now, we will never see more than just talking shop. We will never see more than words unless we are able to work through our trauma that enables us to not see black people, other black people that look like us, as a threat. Unless we do that work, we will continue to be the token one. Token one is not enough to affect the type of change that will change the course and direction of many black lives. In those workspaces where I have created all black teams, I have created diverse teams, so not just black, Asian and minority ethnics in those teams. In roles where I have made sure that I have been in positions whereby I can also speak on certain issues that my white counterparts will not understand, as being a manager of a team. Affecting the change in the working world and the corporate world has been something I carry on my shoulders. So when people ask me what the key to my success is, one of those keys is that I've been able to hand out those keys to fellow black people as I have walked through that door as the token one and opened the door for the rest of them to walk in. That has been part of my success. So every time a gatekeeper refuses to open the gate, there is an element of disappointment that I feel. And yes, I do feel dejected. And sometimes I then grapple with the gremlin of self-doubt, because there is nothing worse than self-doubt created by fellow black people. It's horrible. It's personal. It feels personal. But I also worship a living God that has allowed me to see, recognize, and walk in my purpose. So the doors that need to be open for me, God will create a way. I have to believe that, because where God created a way for me in my career, in my personal career, God will create a way for this podcast to reach those people that need to be reached. So gatekeepers, when you're talking and you are pushing the Black Lives Matter agenda, you need to walk in it as well. because you become unstuck when you just talk about it but don't walk in it. That drawbridge that the white man created and told you to close after you is only going to create more problems for you, because when you are then trying to assert your blackness in white dominated areas, you become the problematic black person and you will be replaced. They will replace you like a can of Pepsi in a fridge. One thing I've learned many things during the course of my career and through the Toy Talks platform is the word of mouth. The word of mouth is probably the most priceless marketing tool. And a lot of people who have benefited and even found and discovered the Toy Talks platform has been through the word of mouth. It has been through people who have benefited and have shared. And the power of that has meant that I have definitely felt a level of pride at black women who are willing to share, who are willing to ensure that their fellow black brothers and sisters also benefit from what they have benefited from, because the more people that hear it are the more people that will put into practice, and the more people that put into practice are the more people that will be motivated and can affect some form of change when they infiltrate positions and decision making tables and rooms. I think that there are a lot of barriers that prevent us as black people from progressing where we should be great. And whilst we are gathering the edges of white people who, number one, seek to protect racism, number two, who are just out and out racist, number three, who use and weaponize their white privilege, while we are gathering those edges, it is time to do some housekeeping. As black people, we have a responsibility to work through the trauma that is racism, that affects us, from allowing us to see our fellow black people as our allies in the workplace and our allies at work. Unless we can live in a space with black people where we don't get me wrong, there's good and bad in every race. There are people that are a threat, but your first knee-jerk reaction to a possible more than one cannot be my role is under threat or I am under threat. It has to be, it is nice to see somebody else that looks like me. How are we going to work together? Or this is an opportunity to affect change as black people. That needs to be the thought process, or at least for me, that is always. Every time I walk into an organization, I see a fellow black woman, I always feel a sense of pride, because I know that sacrifice that black woman had to do to get to that position. I see a black woman in a senior position, I am filled with pride at the potential of myself knowing where I can aspire to too. There is a power in being able to see ourselves in senior positions, in the same role, or in just penetrating organizations where we're not familiar with seeing ourselves. There is a power in that. There is an encouragement in that. And there is an opportunity in that. As black people, there's a lot of internal biases that we have. So for instance, we are happy to spend money in white businesses because we convince ourselves we were going to get a great service. Because maybe typically you have had an experience with a black-owned business and it wasn't a great experience. And then that defines every experience of black-owned companies for you. You cannot work like that. Because within white-owned businesses, there's good and bad experiences too. But we are conditioned by society to believe that white is right, it's superior, white is great. And anything black is no good, or we're suspicious of it. But we're not suspicious of our oppressors. We're not suspicious of the former white colonizers. We're not suspicious of those who enslaved our ancestors and continue to mentally enslave us. We're not suspicious of them. It's our fellow black people that understand that we look in their eyes and we see our same pain, but we don't trust that. That's mad to me. That don't make any sense. I was talking on Instagram Live last week about a company called Tropical Sun. You know, the seasoning, you buy a seasoning. So any white people that are listening, I know that seasoning for some of you is a very foreign concept, but seasoning is more than salt and pepper. Black people, we know how much money we spend on seasoning. Tropical Sun is a very, very popular seasoning company owned by an Asian man or family. I believe it's family owned. It's been around for years. And black people had started to clock on to the fact that they're not really pro-black. They're just all about utilizing and appropriating black culture to expand their pockets. And Tropical Sun then saw a decline in black people or ethnic minorities alike buying, especially black people, buying their product. And what happened is they renamed Tropical Sun, I think it's Authentically Jamaican or something. That is the power that black people have. This is the power that white people fear. The power of our economy as black people, the power of spending. You're willing to rebrand your whole brand because black people are not spending, just so you can have access to black money that makes you rich. But within our own communities as black people, we don't even acknowledge our richness by reinvesting it in black businesses. We're happy to give it out and make other people rich. And then we act as if our black lives don't matter every time we give away our power. Every time we give away our power. When you are thinking of buying a product, it is not second nature for us to think, is this a black-owned business? We're almost not even confident to ask. I'm telling you now that this Black Lives Matter is a shift, and it provides us the opportunity to ask that question. It permits us to ask that question. Are you a black-owned business? The call to action of these black brands hasn't just been about stand with us. It's also been about tell us how many black people are in your organisation, PR teams, and how many black people are sitting in your senior management teams and therefore affect change. That call for action has been twofold, and some people have not been meeting those requests. They haven't been equal to the task. And when companies cannot tell you that information, the call to action shifts to us to make a decision about whether we're going to continue to invest in those businesses. Every time you invest in a business by spending, using the power of spend, you make other businesses richer. And if you choose then to not even consider black businesses, you take away from the mouths of black people in terms of our richness. And we are happy to make Asian communities rich, white communities rich, every other community rich. But the poorest community will be the black community. And then we wonder why we're staying stagnant and not growing. That responsibility sits amongst every single black person to make our community rich. We have to be intentional in how we spend. We have to be forthright, and also we have to believe and understand the power of our strength as black people to affect change at every level. Last week, a young lady sent something to me and she says, "Hi Toya, I just wanted to bring I wanted to raise awareness of this, and because you have a platform, I was hoping that you could also use your platform to raise this awareness." So I said to her, "Have you raised this awareness?" She says, "Well, no, because I don't have much of a platform, but you do." So I thought that, I says, no. You need to change your mindset where you think the responsibility to bring awareness is somebody else who has maybe a higher number of followers, but you still have power in your own voice to affect change. Change is the responsibility of all, not one or some, it is all. So yes, I'll raise awareness, but I will only raise awareness if I know that you are going to stand with me as a fellow ally to raise awareness too as a fellow black woman. There is strength in our own voice, but we do not believe in our strength because we are told that our numbers are too small. We are told that we are not enough. So already then we think we don't have a voice. We take our voices away from ourselves, because this young lady that approached me with the best intentions, all right, she didn't have that many followers, but she could have still raised that awareness. But she's already told herself that her voice isn't loud enough or can't affect that change. So she stays silent and gives somebody else that responsibility. But if they come together, they become two as opposed to one. And this is the way we need to think. We need to start seeing the power in ourselves. Because you see the white man, you know why they're holding on to this, oh, all lives matter. The way they're holding on to this, there's no such thing as white privilege, we're all a human race. Do you know why they're holding on to it? Because as soon as black people proactively acknowledge and realize the strength in our community, we potentially, there'll be a shift and will weaken the strength of the white man, and they cannot stand it. White people like Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings needs to hold on to their position of strength. And that's why they will not outwardly stand for us. They won't. They won't. It was, what's his name? Something Hancock. I can't even remember what position he has now. They asked him directly, how many black people, a white woman asked him, how many black people are in your cabinet? He was talking around. He was mentioning all the Asian people that form part of BAME, which already we've addressed before in previous podcast episodes about the problematic nature of BAME. This is a classic example, because for him, if he mentions a couple of Asian people, that's okay because we're part of the BAME minority. But we're talking about black people whose experiences of racism and experience of the oppressive nature, destructive and violent nature of this country is different from every other race. But he couldn't. He was saying he was sitting next to Kwame. He can't confidently come out with numbers or names of black people. Do you know why? Because their white privilege is so elite. Yeah, they don't even see us. They don't even see us. We are just ants on the ground. They don't even see us. These white people, like the Boris Johnsons, need to hold on to their white privilege. But they hold on to it, and they're so entrenched inside it, they don't see us. Whether you want to believe this or not, yeah, we're at war, you know. We're at war with the white oppressor who has continued to oppress us. And the war we're having now is saying Black Lives Matter. It will matter. It always matters. And we are proactively ensuring that you recognize that black people are here. And this construct of oppression is no more. Then they will come out with, they don't believe there's racism in society. In fact, racism doesn't exist. But you've got statues. You have got monuments that are a reflection of the racist man's achievements in stripping black people of what intrinsically belongs to us. They want to remember slavery, and they want us to remember slavery. That's why they have the monuments up. Then they will tell you that there's no racism. White people hold on to their white privilege and their achievements of their forefathers of colonization. And why they don't say anything, because they're very good at being covertly racist. There are symbols of slave masters. Can you imagine? Then you want to stand in my face and tell me racism doesn't exist, but you have been honouring it with these your statues and reminders of your achievements of killing black people. That is mad. Over the last week, I've had a lot of people that have written to me, messaged me and said, you know, Toya, we're working for organisations that haven't even released any type of broadcast comms about, you know, what's happening in America, about Black Lives Matter, about the they haven't condemned the murder of George Floyd. And I'm working in these organisations, and maybe there's like a handful of black people, and I'm not understanding. I'm so angry. How do I make them talk about it? But again, as black people in the workplace, where we know the rat race and we know the ducking and diving we've had to do to get in these positions, you've never positioned yourself to be getting quick wins, and therefore then positioned yourself to now, in this type of situation, be able to use your voice. What do I mean by that? Some of us are working in these organisations and we refuse to assert ourselves in micro situations. So for instance, there are organisations, when I started off in my career, I always said to myself, to grow in confidence, I have to achieve some quick wins that will give me the confidence to believe that I can go on and be a bit more vocal and louder and ensure that I am seen. So if I'm negotiating a contract and say the salesperson doesn't agree with a certain clause, but I know that I need this clause in this contract and these are the ramifications if I don't, I need to assert myself enough and be confident enough that I know what I am doing and make sure that clause goes in, and it will go in. And I'm like, yes, that is an achievement. That is me making sure that I'm asserting myself, not just as a black woman, but as a young professional, and then creating a name for myself. So in doing those things, I'm delivering, but equally as well, I'm becoming a subject matter expert, and I'm becoming an authority in my role. I'm understanding this job better than my manager, so that my manager now looks at me like a safe pair of hands. So if I'm already making sure that on a micro level, I'm achieving these quick wins, or maybe somebody has said something to me quite disrespectful, and I'm asserting myself in the workplace by addressing it in the most professional way, but making sure I'm firm with that addressing. If I continue to make sure that I'm achieving these quick wins, and in doing that, you are not only creating a name for yourself, but you're growing in a personal confidence of who you are as an employee, who you are as a person, and who you are in white spaces as a black person. Then if you have already then done that, and you've made sure that you've established your credibility, that would now be a launch pad for you to then say, hey, manager, in light of the murder of George Floyd, as a black person, I know from an emotional standpoint the roller coaster I have been going through in addressing racism, in navigating the workplace where I don't see a lot of black people that look like me, and also as well, condemning racism from a management perspective has become even more polarized. I would also like to take this opportunity to ask the organisation, or to ask you, if you can send some comms or communicate to the black community about where this organisation stands in terms of Black Lives Matter, and how they are going to progressively tackle racism, and moving forward, how the black community can get involved, and the black community within this organisation can get involved in the proactive stamping out and change required for black people to benefit and to progress in this organisation. You need to be sending emails like that, but you can't just send them like that if you haven't even established your own credibility. When I go into organisations, I establish my credibility. I deliver. I navigate. I have difficult conversations, and I assert myself on a micro level. I get my reputation established and entrenched. So when certain things come up and then I address them, it's not far removed from what they're used to seeing, but then my voice carries weight because that credibility has already been established. I've challenged certain things on micro levels. I've picked my battles. I've made sure that when it comes to the role, I'm a subject matter expert. So they don't want to rock the apple cart with me. That becomes my leverage to then talk on matters like Black Lives Matter in the workplace. We have work to do, my fellow black sisters, we have work to do. So when you're feeling like you can't have those conversations, I think the deeper question is, why can't you have those conversations? What haven't you sown to be able to have those conversations? I was speaking to one of my good friends, Shay from Chicane. She asked me a question. Very good question, she said. Toya, do you feel that when you go into certain workplaces, they're intimidated by you and everything that comes with being Toya? I laughed. I said, Shay, I've gotten to a point where I know myself so well that I know how to navigate the workplace enough to do and make sure I do my observations in the beginning. There's some organizations you will ask them, oh, what was Toya like? They'll tell you, oh, she's very quiet, but she delivers and gets the work done. Very quiet, she keeps herself to herself. There's some organizations you'll go to and say, oh, yeah, Toya, yeah, she talks now and again, but she delivers. She's very good at what she's subject matter expert. Other organizations, oh, Toya's so outgoing. Oh, she's such a lovely person to be around. Life and soul of the party, really good with her job. They are all different faces that are put on depending on the organisation. because there's no blanket way of behaving in these organizations, yeah? It depends on what I see when I get there. Some organizations have very problematic issues. You have the managers who are outwardly racist and discriminatory. You have workplaces who are over familiar and therefore become very disrespectful very quickly. You have workplaces that will test your boundaries, but more importantly, they will prevent you from progressing. And you have to know which part of your personality you're willing to show them, but more importantly, how to manage them. So when one talks about everything that is Toya, I don't take all of myself into these workplaces. I'm so sorry. White people taught me very, very well about how to put a mask on and which mask to put on. I am never fully myself at any workplace because these are professional organizations that don't have the right, have never had the opportunity to know me. I know me. And that is more important than anything else because I'm walking in there fully in the consciousness of my blackness, fully knowing me. But the common theme in all these workplaces is my credibility is unmatched. I am great at my job. I make sure I know it better than the bosses so that when it's time to leave, every organization will be begging me to stay. When I say it's like this, they accept it. That credibility gives you the authority to be able to speak on things. I slowly work my way to a point whereby I've asserted myself and gotten these quick little wins in things that may be insignificant to people. But when you look at me as an employee, I am the full package. So when difficult conversations arises, I walk into those conversations and I will have them, knowing full well that even if you have stereotypes about black people or even about me, my leverage is the credibility that I've cultivated for myself. And that gives me the right to speak in spaces where maybe you may feel that you don't have the right to. Have you worked on your credibility? How have you worked on your credibility? What have you achieved in working in working on that credibility? What quick wins have you achieved that has given you and propelled you into the confidence to be able to have those difficult conversations? I've had difficult conversations with my manager before. I don't like the way you spoke to me. And in fact, I found it really disrespectful and really unprofessional. And moving forward, I'm going to need you to actually think about what you say before you say it. They may not like what they hear, but before they move mad, they have to think about my value and what I bring to that organization and team. Because every single day I make you look good every time I achieve and every time I deliver. So you're less likely to move mad when you know how full one's leverage cup is. These are the strategic ways of navigating work. Unless you put in the work, unless you're willing to strategically navigate, you will never have a voice loud enough in the workplace to affect change. And that's the fact. That's the fact. You have to start working on those quick wins. Knowing what your objective is when you walk into an organization. What are my objectives? What am I trying to get out of it here? What is it that for my career I need out of this place? Stop giving yourself wholeheartedly to organizations hoping they'll accept you because you in yourself feel like your only validation is from white people. My validation doesn't come from white people. I validate myself. I validate myself through my accomplishments. I validate myself by negotiating. I validate myself by ensuring that I continue to grow and achieve and become a subject matter expert, become an authority in what I do. I validate myself by ensuring that I project manage my career. I validate myself by studying the white people that I work with. That's how Toya validates herself. And my confidence comes from taking the time and the opportunity to recognize that me and these white people are not the same. No matter how much I'm laughing with them and drinking cold tea, I'm always going to be a black woman. They will always see my colour, and I'm okay with that. They will always try to oppress me with their stereotypes in order to control me and protect their whiteness and their white privilege. I know all of this when I walk in. I take the time, at least for the first 3 to 6 months, to study these people. And then I decide which Toya they get. There's different versions of Toya for the office. And there's one version of Toya in real life. The workplace ain't real life. Because if it was real life, we would get to say whatever it is we want to say, how we want to say it, and how you want to deliver it. But when you're in the workplace, that professionalism puts one hand behind your back in how you interact with people. You can't fully really be yourself at work. It's not possible, because that means you'll be swapping jobs every day. They'll be getting rid of you every day. But white people, their blueprint is it's really the same. So navigating them is very easy if you're willing to put the work in. It does take time. It does take time, but it's achievable. If I'm an example of anything, is that I know how to navigate white people in the white construct of work and still be successful and reach and attain heights of success and continue to grow. I do not know everything. I do not, and I'm willing to learn. I learn every day. Every workplace I've worked at, I learn from them. But when people say to me about, stereotypes that white people place on black people, how do you deal with that? You have to just acknowledge that they're there and accept them. Listen, that is their go-to. You could speak as calm like this, your voice sound like butter. They'll tell you you're being aggressive. Then you use that word for them. I find your behavior not only aggressive, challenging, and actually shaking the foundations of my personality, to be quite honest, to be quite confident. You're eroding my confidence. These are the words that white people taught me, and I use it for them. When I use it for them, they look at me, they're confused. You're calling me aggressive, and to be honest, as a black woman, I take that as a racial slur, because that's from a very preconceived stereotype, and you're using that stereotype to address me because it's your go-to in trying to make sure that you assert your authority over me. There's ways of saying things. English is such a great language that white people, the way they will sharpen that language and use it towards you like a weapon. If you do not learn how to speak like them, they will use their language and their construct that benefits them to oppress you. You've got to start having conversations with yourself and start asking yourself, what type of employee, what type of manager, what type of senior manager, what type of CEO, what type of do I want to be? So that when there are difficult conversations, I've already sown those seeds. I've already given myself the leverage to have the authority to ask certain things and have some difficult conversations that often white people or racist people find difficult to have, especially in the workplace. There are a lot of lessons and a lot of things that I've learned over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And there's definitely a lot of self-reflection and kind of making sure that as myself as a person, making sure that I continue to add value to the black community. And in everything I do, all that Toya Talks as a platform stands for is the advancement of black women. And in saying that, I definitely have, like I said, had to ask myself a few questions, had to have certain conversations with myself. I recognise and respect our black gatekeepers, but a lot of those black gatekeepers don't want me to walk through the gates. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I'm no longer asking permission to walk through that gate. I will continue to create a lane for myself, and I will continue to ensure that I provide content that is beneficial to black women and in turn the black community. I recognise that in walking in my purpose and understanding the gravity of what Toya Talks as a platform provides to black women, if black gatekeepers no longer want to provide me or want to create opportunities for me, I'll create them for myself. As far as I'm concerned, I feel like in order for Black Lives Matter to really make a difference to all our black lives, the black lives that have been constantly compromised by racists, people compromised by so many different things, and our history that has left us very traumatized, in order for the Black Lives Matter movement to really, really take full effect and enable change, black people need to unite as a community, including the black gatekeepers. To have long-lasting effects beyond the hashtags and the trends, black community, we have to continue to rise, be strong, and use this opportunity of conversation and talk to proactively, progressively create real change. We're all responsible for that change. No matter how many numbers you have on social media, no matter how small your social media following is, Most important thing is understanding the strength that comes with our blackness, utilizing that strength and making sure that we continue to grow as a community so that we can see long-lasting change. Everybody who has shared this podcast, everybody who has recommended it to a friend, everybody who has shared the Toya Talks platform, including the website, I want to thank you for supporting what has been something that has been so important and instrumental to Black women's lives all over the world. Toya Talks is yours. It belongs to each and every one of you and has afforded me the opportunity to share my experiences, to teach, educate and motivate Black women how to navigate the social aspect of work. You've seen from every episode, it hasn't necessarily been about in the workplace. It's also been about things that we need to do outside of the workplace so we can be effective in the workplace. The workplace continues to be a hub of oppression and often is the backdrop for a lot of discrimination and racism we face as Black women. We have an opportunity now to make real change, and the real change starts with you. Your voice is as loud as you shout, and the loudest in the room is not necessarily the person that affects change. It's just understanding the power of your voice, how to use it, and when to use it. I thank all the women that have reached out to me, all the women and all the Black people that see me, see what I give. Black Lives Matter has always been a movement that I have been a part of and something that I am proud of. I'm proud of my Blackness. From the women that write to me to tell me that they've referenced me in their dissertations, to Black women who have utilised a lot of the examples to go in the workplace and make sure they assert themselves and be recognised. I recognise that not only is Toya Talks instrumental to many women, it's accessed by women all over the world. You guys have shared, recommended, reached out to me, left reviews on Apple Podcasts, sent me direct messages, listened to the podcast on the website and all podcast platforms. You've also bought the masterclasses and engaged with me on social media. And for that, I thank you. Let us continue to ensure that we hold Black gatekeepers responsible for opening the gate and allowing us to participate in what will continue to be an insurgence of Black power. Black Lives Matter is a movement. It represents change, progress, and the ability for all of us to collectively use our voices to affect that change. If you would like to connect with me further, of course you know that I have the Toya Talks website, which is www.toyatalks.com. You'll see the masterclasses on there. We've got the CV masterclass, the interview skills masterclass. We have also the mother and daughter masterclass, and we've got 2 new masterclasses which will go live this week, navigating racism and negotiation skills. And I'm so excited to be able to deliver both of those new masterclasses, which again will be live this week. If you want to connect with me on social media, then of course there's Instagram, which is Toya_Washington or Toya_Talks, or connect with me on Twitter, Toya_W, or we have Snapchat, which is Toya Washington, all one word. I also want to open up the opportunity for you guys to reach out to me if you have any work-related dilemmas that you would like us to discuss, talk about, and raise here on the Toya Talks podcast. Of course, I'm more than happy to provide you with my advice, examples, and hopefully help you to solve some of your dilemmas. So if that is you, email hello@toyatalks.com. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and this episode, catching up on all the podcast episodes that you may have missed. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.